So far, this course has covered the methods that you'll use when you're conducting your systematic review. This module will focus on how to report your systematic review, and specifically, this video will cover the checklists that are available to help guide you through the writing up process. So there are a lot of resources that are available to guide you through the writing up and reporting of your systematic review ready for publication. Reporting guidelines help to ensure that the review methods are described clearly, that they're transparent, and provide sufficient detail so that the methods can be repeated by others. The Equator Network website is a really great place to find those reporting guidelines. And as you can see, it includes reporting guidelines for a lot of different research methods. There are 47 reporting guidelines and resources for the writing up of systematic reviews. This includes reporting guidelines for a wide range of systematic reviews, including systematic reviews of epidemiological studies, which use the Moose guidelines, and systematic reviews of qualitative research, which uses the NTREC guidelines. But by far the most common and most relevant for this course is the PRISMA checklist. And this stands for the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. The PRISMA checklist was designed primarily for systematic reviews of studies that evaluate the effects of health interventions, irrespective of the design of the included studies. As of August 2020, the PRISMA checklist was cited by over 60,000 reports, and it's endorsed for use in almost 200 journals. This means you'll often have to provide a PRISMA checklist when you're submitting your paper to a journal. Now, the really great thing about the PRISMA checklist is the number of extensions that can be used alongside it. This means it can be really flexible, as you can tailor the reporting guidelines you need to your specific systematic review. So some of the extensions relate to specific parts of your systematic review that you'll be writing up, such as reporting guidelines for your abstracts or searches. There are extension checklists for different methods of synthesis. For example, if you're not planning to conduct a meta-analysis, you may consider the Synthesis Without Meta-Analysis or SWIM guidelines. There are also extensions for reporting network meta-analyses and meta-analyses using individual participant data. They also have reporting guidelines for specific types of systematic reviews, such as systematic reviews assessing diagnostic test accuracy, and also for variations on systematic reviews, such as scoping reviews. So this is the first section of the PRISMA checklist. The second section is shown on the next slide. So the PRISMA checklist includes 7 sections, which are highlighted in yellow, with 27 items. And as you can see, some of them include sub-items. As you can see, there is a basic description about the information you need to be including for each item. There is an expanded checklist, which provides more detail that you can also use, which can be found in the reference pack for this module. As you can see, the last column says location where item is reported. So you'll need to give a page or even a line number for where you have reported each item. This means that when you come to submit your manuscript, reviewers can check that you've reported all of the items on the checklist. I'm not going to go through each specific item on the PRISMA checklist, as it should be pretty self-explanatory, and most of the information will have been covered in previous modules, but I will just note a couple of things. First, as you can see, there is a lot of information that you should be providing when you're writing up your systematic review. And often journals have very strict word, table and figure limits. Some things may not be included in the main manuscript and can be provided in the appendix instead. For example, you would normally find the full search strategy, which often has quite a high word count, in the appendix. And, for example, Section 13 is somewhere that you could consider using another checklist from other reporting guidelines. For example, you could consider using the Synthesis Without Meta-Analysis guidelines to guide your write-up of your synthesis methods here. This is the second section of the PRISMA checklist, and again, just a couple of things to note here. One thing that's really commonly missed from the reporting of a systematic review is 16b, which is providing a table of excluded studies and giving reasons why they were excluded. This should be included to help increase the transparency about the decisions made in the study selection process. Something that you won't have covered on this course yet is assessing the certainty of evidence, which uses the GRADE checklist, and this will be covered later today. Alongside the PRISMA checklist is the PRISMA flow diagram, which provides a graphical representation of the study selection procedure. The boxes in purple should always be reported. The boxes in grey should only be used if you're doing additional searches. For example, if you're doing citation searching or you're conducting an update of a previous systematic review. I don't know whether anyone has spotted this, but some of the boxes near the top of the flow diagram say records, and near the bottom they say reports. And this is an important distinction to note, as there can be a discrepancy between the number of records and the number of reports. Here's an example. I'm currently working on a systematic review looking at the effectiveness of treatments for children with relapsed and refractory rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a type of solid tumour found in children. And we found this full text record that was eligible for inclusion in our systematic review. However, we also identified 3 clinical trial registrations and a conference abstract associated with the trial. So in fact, we had 5 records that were associated with 1 report. If you are conducting additional searches, such as searching conference abstract proceedings or clinical trial registries, you need to make sure that you check whether any of the records link to the same trial. And you need to then make sure that this is clear in your PRISMA flow diagram to increase the transparency and clarity for readers. Finally, I'll just go through a couple of do's and don'ts for when you're using the PRISMA checklist. First, you shouldn't use the PRISMA checklist as an instruction manual for conducting a systematic review. Hopefully what you've learnt on this course will be enough to help get you started, and there's additional guidance available, such as the CRD Manual on Systematic Reviews or the Cochrane Handbook, that should be used. However, it is useful to be familiar with what's included in the checklist when you're planning and conducting a systematic review, to make sure all of the important information is captured. For example, if you didn't note down the reasons why you excluded studies at full text screening, and realised that you needed to provide this when you come to submit your manuscript, it would be really time consuming to go back and go through the excluded studies to work out the reasons why they weren't eligible. Similarly, use the PRISMA checklist early in the writing up process to make sure all of the items are addressed. You don't want to be at the stage of submitting your manuscript to a journal, realise that you need to submit a PRISMA checklist, and find that you've missed some of the items for your report. And finally, if you're ever conducting a quality assessment of a systematic review, you shouldn't be using the PRISMA checklist for this. There are a lot of other checklists that are available to assess the methodological quality of systematic reviews. Thank you very much for listening to this video on reporting guidelines for systematic reviews, specifically the PRISMA checklist. I hope this is useful for when you come to think about writing up your systematic review.